If you're looking for conservative conversations, commentary and content, then Family First has them all. And best of all, thanks to our thousands of supporters, there's no paywall or pesky advertisements. Check out our lineup. Our regular video blog from Bob McCoskrie called McBlog, with a regular dose of commentary around social and family issues. Family Matters, with guests from around the world and here in New Zealand, focusing on a range of issues and hosted by Simon O'Connor. Built on Truth, as Samuel Bilton takes a youth-focused dive into some of the contemporary cultural issues. The No Fluff Zone with Ala Pomalele offers her candid insights on key social and moral topics. Our very popular weekly political analysis show, Straight Talk, with a panel of guests who are unashamedly and unapologetically social conservatives. Political Playback, Thursdays live at 5 p.m, as we discuss the week in Parliament and New Zealand politics in general from a conservative viewpoint. And our newest feature, Counterculture, a young team of panellists discussing faith, culture and the issues shaping millennials and Gen Z. Finally, start each weekday informed. 7:30 a.m. live Monday, Wednesday and Friday. Daybreak with Bob McCoskrie as he gives an overview on key stories you need to be aware of. 7:30 a.m. live Tuesday and Thursday. A more in-depth discussion, Solid Ground with Simon O'Connor. You can access all these important discussions in the format that you prefer. Watch, read, listen. We will continue to promote strong families, marriages, religious freedom and the value of life based on the footprint of faith which has underpinned New Zealand for generations, and most importantly, be a voice for your values. Visit familyfirst.nz to see the full lineup and latest episodes. Go to familyfirst.nz and join the conversation.
Hello, New Zealand. Welcome to Political Playback. I was trying to remember the name of the show because we've had a couple of episodes of various things this morning. In fact, I think this is a trifecta, isn't it, Simon? We did a little guest spot on Solid Ground, and then we did a breaking news deep dive into the gender bill that was voted on last night. And here we are doing a big mop-up. So I'm exhausted.
I am too, and there's a possibility I have to record a Family Matters podcast later, but I'm trying to push it out till tomorrow.
Okay, well, I'm sure you heard about this thing. The media would have been all over it, as are the political parties. Oh, maybe not. No, pink ribbon breakfast. Pink shirt day gets lots of media coverage, but pink ribbon doesn't. But look, it affects women, so maybe that's the problem. They can't quite define the target audience. After you highlighted this to me, Simon, I actually did a little look around the social media pages to see what the political parties were saying. And the only party that seemed to mention it was the National Party. And just basically politicked on it and said that they were doing the free breast screening. So, yeah, kind of interesting that they're all over Pink Shirt Day. Didn't find much write-up in the media either. Did you see any evidence of it anywhere?
No, which is a pity. I mean, particularly in the political realm, supporting things like this is easy. You know, put it in a media context, it's easy copy. So whether it's the pink breakfast, if it's prostate cancer with the blue ribbons or Alzheimer's awareness, it's actually just easy. But I just thought it was ironic after last night's debate around what is a woman, and the next day is Pink Ribbon Day, and you say most of the parties, certainly those who voted against the bill, went very quiet. Yeah, exactly. All right, before we get into our topics, I do just want to get your comment on this story. It was the front page story in Wellington, the Post. Interestingly, they're just up the very top. They acknowledged it. So there we go. They just made liars of me. It is the pink ribbon, isn't it, up the top? Anyway, so ruined. Oh, that's it. My whole credibility stuff now. No, that's good. Credit to them where credit is due, but not on this particular story because it was splashed across the front page. They put a
they attributed a quote to the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Winston Peters, which they then had to backtrack because he never said it. A Green MP said it. And the Green MP tried to make out that basically the Israeli embassy was shifting to a building where they could hunker down under other civilians, sort of hide from the attacks. I mean, it was a terrible implication, just a shocking article.
Oh, it was a dirty little hatchet job by the journalist, or let's just call him a reporter, actually. He can't be a journalist because he's displaying no ethics. And the same goes for the wider Post and Stuff crew, the editors, and that did not stop this. Front page, dirty little hatchet job, falsifying quotes, and then egregious attempts of equivalence. The likes of Hamas literally use human shields. And the Post is saying that actually, in this case, because the Israeli embassy is in a tower block, along with the likes of the French embassy and others, that they're using those tenants as human shields. I mean, it is just appalling equivalence. And the final kicker is basically, from what one can tell, is this reporter is running the lines of the John Minto crowd, who are acting like bother boys or thugs. They are writing to every tenant in the building and saying, oh, look, because the Israeli embassy's here, there could be trouble. Well, the trouble will come from them. They are the violent, intimidating protesters. They are literally like the gangs and the thugs who go down the streets to business owners and hit them up for protection money. I mean, it is just a shocker. But the Post was happy to run it. The editors didn't stop it. In fact, they thought it was a great idea to put this on the front page of one of New Zealand's main newspapers. And I think really, Bob, it just shows you how pathetically low the media has got. And I think this guy, Tom Hunt, Sinead Boucher, who heads it up, they should all be called out for this just terrible piece of reporting.
Yeah, I've had a few angry responses to it, and the interesting thing is that what we've always said is that the media, rather than change their ideology and try and win back trust, they'll basically die with their audience. They'd prefer to die with this kind of bias than actually try to correct it. That seems to be the evidence. I hope they change their mind. I hope they see how they can win back the trust. But as maybe I can give a little teaser for our conference in September. We're going to talk about out with the old and in with the new in terms of media. And Nigel said yet another nail in the coffin for the mainstream media. I think we're running out of places to actually put the nails, aren't we?
Look, I think so. I think they will burn themselves to the ground. They'll blame everybody else. But there isn't much of a news story in this. Embassy changes location. Who cares?
But if it's Israel, if it's Israel, it's Leeds. Always the case. We don't hear about Uganda or other countries where there's terrorists going through. It's just when it involves Israel.
Oh, it's a anti-Semitic obsession. It's a huge problem. And look, I wrote about this on socials. Articles like this, intimidation tactics by the likes of Minto's thugs, is actually creating a real safety risk. I think it's sadly only a matter of time that we see the level of violence that we saw at Bondi Beach and elsewhere. I hope and pray that does not happen. But these guys are deliberately fueling it. The other thing, just quickly on embassies, we still have an Iranian ambassador, or rather an ambassador to represent the Islamic regime. The Post doesn't talk about that. We still have the Russian ambassador resident in New Zealand. The Post doesn't talk about that, which comes back to your point, Bob. They are obsessed with Israelis and Jews, and it's well past time they pulled their head in. Just awful stuff.
Okay, let's get into our topics. And the first one, there's been a lot of chatter online about this particular one, and it's because there is a bill going through Parliament which is all about education, but it has got this little chapter in it, shall we call it, section, and it's about regulations relating to homeschooling. And it's talking about rules specifying how frequently the report needs to be made, the manner and form of reports, assessment requirements. The problem is, well, there's two problems that as I can understand it, Simon, and I know you can clarify this, is that they haven't consulted with homeschoolers. They seem to have avoided dealing with any of the kind of the union reps, so to speak, or the representative groups of homeschoolers. And the second thing, it's been snuck in kind of the committee stage of a bill reading, which is after the select committee. So the public can't get a say. Now, Ala, our researcher, Ala Pomalele, she's written up a summary of what's happened and what you can do, how you can respond and who you should email and things you could say. But look, can you just give us your take on what's happening here?
Yeah, it's not a good take, or rather my take, maybe my take is good, but what the government's doing here, bad optics, a bit like the pay equity, Bob, it just sort of comes out of nowhere, no consultation. That's the first thing that you rightly identify. In fact, what they call the regulatory impact statement, sort of the officials reviewing of what they're doing, explicitly says that they have chosen not, repeat, not to consult with homeschooling parents. They acknowledge that it's controversial. In many ways, they're acknowledging that they probably should have, but they decided they wouldn't because there'd probably be some kickback. I mean, that's a shocker in itself. Secondly, you're right, the minister has slipped this in after public submissions. Thirdly, what is the problem trying to be solved here? I mean, I'll go broad, but actually, homeschooled kids are doing pretty well. In fact, I would put homeschooled kids' academic abilities above probably the average coming out of state schools. So what is the problem that's being resolved here? Then the next, and there's two more quick points. One is, what are all these reports? What are the reports needed for? More administration for parents to write what to the Minister of Education, who really have no idea about homeschooling, I'd posit. They're probably good on state education and ideological control. What do they really know about homeschooling? And the real kicker, and it's there in E at the bottom. So it's section 640A, subsection 2, and I'm not sure I even phrased the next part, but E, provide for any other matter necessary. Look, these look like boring details, but the days of Parliament drafting very prescriptive laws has gone. So in the past, a piece of legislation like this, Bob, and I think I know I'm belaboring it, but people need to understand, the Parliament would have debated, okay, we're going to have reporting. This is what the reporting will be. It was very prescriptive. Now, and this government as well, which is meant to be about less control, is handing all that power over to bureaucrats, unelected, faceless bureaucrats. The Parliament's saying, we will grant you, the Ministry of Education, all the power that you need to come up with all and every wonderful form of report and assessments and any other matter necessary. So just to make one quick example, you imagine the ministry asking every homeschooler to say, how are you abiding by the nature of climate change? Please report on your approach to Te Ao Māori. Please tell us how you keep a safe idea around LGBTQI, so on and so forth. That could be ad absurdum, but that's the power. And I don't know why Erica Stanford and the government are allowing this to happen. It is absurd.
Okay, I would like to suggest that the reason they're using this, it's a wedge, and my understanding is that it was because of the Tom Phillips case, which was that tragedy where he hid the kids for a number of years in the bush. It ended up with him being shot. But the problem was that the Ministry of Education had granted him the ability to homeschool. And so this is a typical example of where you take the most extreme case and use that to slam down. It's like gun control, it's like anti-smacking, it's based on one quirky case that's out there. And so, yeah, I think they're using the Tom Phillips as kind of justification. Look, I noticed that our social media guru, Ken Buist, is online, and he's put the link to this article in the comments section. So if you are, wherever you're watching online, you'll probably see the link come up, and you can read this if you are a homeschooler and be aware of exactly what's going on. So we certainly want to make that known. All right, while we're in Parliament, last night was a good night though, because biology actually won the first round of the definition of woman and man. Now people can go to our website or go to our YouTube account or social media, and they'll see our special deep dive into what happened last night, and the good and the bad and the wacky. Here's just a very quick summary that I just put together of what happened last night.
There is a word for this bill, and it is irresponsible. The reason it is irresponsible is because it creates a platform for hate.
I, along with so many millions of New Zealanders and so many billions of people around this world,
She's counted them all.
am tired. We're tired of governments throwing minorities under the bus. So what is a woman, Mr. Speaker? Whatever the hell she wants to be.
For many New Zealanders, the confusion is not about science. It is about why speaking plainly about basic reality has suddenly become treated as offensive. Because most people understand instinctively that biological sex is real. It is observable at birth, and it matters in medicine, reproduction, sports, prisons, and spaces where privacy and safety are important.
I acknowledge my privilege. I'm a white, cis, gay man. This debate is about who is in and who is out, about who is included and about who is excluded.
Since Adam and Eve, people have known what a woman and a man are, and even if you're not a person of faith, people have known this since the dawn of time. New Zealanders should have confidence that their institutions and the very language of their laws reflect reality.
I'm not convinced that this bill will advance the rights and opportunities or the well-being of women and girls in any way, shape or form in New Zealand. As Minister for Women, my focus is firmly on the real challenges facing women today.
If this bill was to pass, as it stands at the moment, and it is a very short bill, so people say it may be changed at select committee, but you're looking at changing almost 50% of the contents. This may prevent women under the age of 20 accessing abortion services.
I roto I te kōpū o te whaia a whānau noa. In a simple translation, a human being is just that, a being descended from te wāhingaro, from Io. I'd also like to acknowledge a couple of other people. Suzanne Levy for your advocacy from Speak Up for Women, Bob McCroskey from Family First.
The ayes are 67, the noes are 55. The question is agreed.
Legislation, Definitions of Woman and Man Amendment Bill, first reading.
All right, so got through the first round, and just a nice acknowledgement there for the petition that we presented, that you and I went down to present with Ala and Sue Reid from our board. The hard work begins now, doesn't it? Select committee.
Yeah, it does, and at least twofold. One, we'll need people to send in submissions. Again, good arguments and perspectives. We'll know in the coming days what the time frame is, what the best committee email and process is. So you can, guaranteed Family First will be on top of that. We'll have some suggestions. There's a lot of arguments that can be used, but are probably not that effective, but there's a number of angles which I think are quite important. The other is that the committee will actually have to do a lot of work, but that is not unusual from a member's bill. So you heard some of the MPs there going, oh, look, it's not well defined. There's a whole lot of other issues that this needs to look at. Yeah, fine. That's what select committees are there for. And I can remember a number of members' bills which came to me when I chaired various committees, which really were just a general statement of intent from the MP, which is fine. But it's actually the select committee that goes and does all the hard yards. And organ donation bills are a really good example. Chris Bishop was the MP behind it. What he put forward in the first reading was really, as I say, just a general statement of intent. It took months and months of enormous hard work by the committee to actually turn it into something workable. And I think that'll be the same case with this bill here.
Yeah, I mean, there was some debate about the fact that it says adult human female, and so therefore that's what that whole claim around abortion was, that if you're not defined as a woman, how can you get an abortion? Tacit admission by the Labor MP, which I don't think she meant to make, is that only women can get pregnant and might want an abortion. So, yeah, that was a kind of an own goal. And I thought it was funny how Chloe misgendered every woman who can define how she wants to be. So all the they, thems are going to be very upset with her misgendering on that particular one. Right, let's just check some of the comments. Murray says, poor Chloe is tired. Her tank is empty. Kind of interesting admission to just say we are so tired. But she has polled She has polled the whole world on that particular issue, so that's nice. Maybe that's why she's tired. Ko Luku says, maybe we are giving this topic too much airtime. In my experience, if something isn't real, it simply goes away. Well, you want to respond to that one, Simon? That's probably the biggest myth that the left want us to believe. We just ignore it, it'll go away.
Well, firstly, kia ora to Luke. So he's saying that his name is Luke. That's what Ko Luke Toko Ingoa says. So I don't think it is something that is going away. It's why so many biological women are, if you will, crying out for help to say, we need to define this. It's absurd that we need to, but actually the activists are just pushing more and more into female spaces and just erasing women. I mean, that's why Chloe's statement, it's whatever you want it to be. Well, what is it? They can't define a woman, and the idea that, oh, it is just whatever you want. Oh, okay, so women are a giraffe, a table, I mean, a light, what is it? It's just so absurd, Bob. It just does my head in.
Well, actually, we've got the issue at home because my daughter actually just sent me a photo of my dog with a bird. Had caught a bird and put it on the middle of the lounge floor. So the dog's not very popular at the moment, but I actually text back and I said, I think she may be identifying as a cat today. So I'm a little bit worried that she's going to meow when I get home rather than bark. Pugs for Life says, so we have a ministry for women but can't define one. I mean, there was a lot of chatter today about the Minister for Women saying that this doesn't solve any problem, sort of, clearly defining what her ministry is. I would suspect that, actually, Sue says it. Sue says Nicola Griggs as Minister of Women was the worst in terms of the speech. Her position as minister is untenable if she can't define what a woman is. Is it that she didn't define what a woman is, or she just wants to be in both camps? She wants, doesn't want to be black and white on this issue. Biological.
No, she doesn't. She was clearly uncomfortable in her speech, not only the tone, but the words used and so forth. So, look, personally, I said it this morning, I think both on Solid Ground and on our breaking news, and as you say, people can jump onto Family First socials like YouTube and Facebook to see those discussions. I mean, I don't... There's no point of having a minister for women who doesn't understand what a woman is, and I'd have to say, sadly, knowing Nicola, and with respect to her knowing her and having been a former colleague, that she clearly doesn't know what a woman is. So how can you be the minister? But actually, I'd just get rid of the whole department. I have no idea why we even need a ministry for women amongst other things. It's time just to shut them all down.
Yeah. Lisa says you only got to see what happened in Australia with Sal Grover to see why it matters. And of course, you can see a very good interview on Family Matters. It has absolutely gone gunbusters online. And it's, there we are, Simon O'Connor interviewing Sal Grover about the case. So if you want to know why we do need to talk about this, just look at what's happened to someone who simply wants to create a woman's only space and has ended up in court, and it's dragging on, and the process is the killer. And so that sort of shows just how bad it can get. All right, let's keep going. Labor's had an interesting week because they've basically said that they've got some policies, but they're not going to tell us about them until after the election. Just before I play what the next Minister of Finance, or the Barbara Edmonds, who could be the next Minister of Finance, said, can you just explain what is this cornerstone policy?
So I think they're calling it their future fund. The idea is that they take all the state-owned enterprises, so think of those things which the Crown owns, so 51% of Air New Zealand, Meridian and all of that, the power companies.
Kiwi Bank.
To Kiwi Bank, all of that, and to direct that their profits all go into a very particular bucket, which is then used for very particular investments. So at the moment, if Air New Zealand or Kiwi Bank or Meridian make a profit, those monies just go into the general accounts of the Crown and then are spent, if you will, generally. Labor's saying, look, we want to, if you will, control those entities and we will choose where the money goes. Now, they were going to appoint a new board to help manage that, but they will be more specific about how and where the money is spent. But there's two issues. One is there's a risk that once you start to try and define who gets the monies from, profitable state-owned enterprises. You're creating a bit of a slush fund. The second is that you can't just transfer or move ownership of state-owned enterprises without taking into account treaty settlements and the like. There's some famous court cases where the government's tried to make changes to state-owned enterprises, and iwi have said, well, hold on a moment, you can't do that. So they're basically promising an idea which hasn't been well thought out. And then there's all the financial side of things. Are they going to start directing money into certain places? Like some of it's to small and medium businesses. Oh, okay. Well, where's the money that was being used currently to fund the road? So it's a messy policy. And I have to say, and you and I were talking about this afternoon before we came online, it's quizzical, he says, scratching his head. It's quizzical that they've fronted without, really knowing the answers. We'll have to tell you after the election. I mean, that's a failure of political optics.
Well, to be fair to the media, they were asking, where's the detail? Will we ever know before we actually vote for you? And she couldn't answer.
You haven't decided yet on what the SOEs are going to be, Rich?
No, because again, we haven't decided what assets to put in it, because different assets have different caveats that come with it. For example, some assets have, for example, treaty claims and overlay, like first right of refusal rights if it gets sold, for example.
Going into the election, New Zealanders won't know what SOEs are going into this fund, and they don't know how many jobs it's going to create.
Because you need officials' advice. We're not going to be reckless and just pick a couple of assets and pop them in without actually knowing what the fiscal cost is there any treaty clauses and any other caveats that are in relation to those assets. I'm very measured and very considered when it comes to that sort of policy development.
Okay, so got a policy, but we can't tell you about it until we get elected. I don't know if those policies work very well, do they?
No, look, to be fair to Barbara, she actually has been quite prudent at one level. It does take a lot of advice, and any opposition party does not have they don't have access to officials like the government does. A government minister has an idea. There are leagues of officials to run around and do the work for them. That is not how it is in opposition. Barbara will have literally one or two staff. So she's right. And actually, it's not inappropriate at one level to say, look, until we get official advice, we can't give you a definitive list and so on and so forth. That's, again, quite appropriate. The strange dynamic is that you still go out, or in this case, Labour goes out and makes a massive announcement. Hey, we've got this policy, but hey, we also don't really know how it could work. And, she's mentioned the treaty. Okay, I would argue just about every entity within the state-owned enterprise space has a treaty provision in one way or another. Yeah, it's messy, very untidy, makes them look a bit foolish, I think is the right word.
Okay, that might have been a bit over a few people's heads like mine. So let's come back to earth and let's talk about the social media ban, which, a lot of people are concerned about. Now, has it been put on hold? Let's just quickly review a couple of things. This is what the parliamentary review came up with. They wanted to introduce the under 16 age restriction. They want a national regulator. That's a no-go from us, and we'll fight that tooth and nail. The last thing we want is another children's commissioner or human rights commissioner or minister for women. But the other proposals, ban notify apps, which they're going through at the moment, regulate platforms' algorithms, so that's accountability on big tech, increase platforms' liability for the content they host, good, liability on big tech, restrict online advertising of alcohol, tobacco and gambling to over 18s. Well, age verification, so that's an interesting one. Review laws, offences of penalties with online harm, so that's accountability of big tech. And public campaigns or resources about online safety, that's great. Education, very important, especially for parents who just feel overwhelmed by what's coming at them and are trying to do their very best. I've talked to parents who are trying to cope with this, but this is a technology that is, a lot of parents, when they have trouble with their phone or their computer, who do they ask for help first? Hey, Johnny, or, one of the kids. Well, happens in my house anyway. So, look, there were some positive things, but they say that Erica Stanford told Q&A that they put it on hold. They do have a government bill coming and they want to introduce it to the House before Parliament. Some people have done the maths on what she said, and basically it needs to be introduced by the beginning of June to meet her previous commitment. So it could come out in the next week or two. Anyway, that's a summary. What do you think's happening here?
I think they clearly want more time to try and develop policy. I wouldn't be surprised. It's the budget next week. So next Thursday is when the budget is dropped and the Parliament goes into urgency. So I'd say there's actually quite a high chance that the first reading of a social media bill will be part of that.
Related to a budget?
Yeah, so yes is the short answer. So the budget gets delivered, but traditionally once a budget is delivered, the House moves into urgency and the government will put all sorts of bills of all sorts of issues into that urgency. And it can often go on for a week, days and days. And it's just this almost, I don't know what's the right word, Bob, an opportunity for the government to push through an enormous amount of legislation. Some of it's directly related to the budget, but often it's just other things. It's just become an accepted part of the parliamentary process that you can, again, use post-budget urgency to ram through a lot of legislation. And it's probably good optics for the government as well. I know there's people who are very skeptical around the social media ban, and that's understandable. But this would be seen as something generally positive, or the government doing something. So it's quite possible that this will begin to happen late next week or the week after. For me, it's just how far it goes. Like, if you don't mind bringing up that list that you just had, there's many good things that have been suggested through the select committee, but I'm actually not happy with number 4, is it? Explore regulating the platform's algorithms. I mean,
true.
Yep. At one level, and this is my own view, we do want to know how they're manipulating people's use. But you know what? I don't want the government to know that, because I don't trust the government of any colour to be in control of the algorithms. Just cast your mind back to those certain years beginning with C, with a woman called Jacinda running the country. What would she have done with that power if she knew the algorithms? And that's just one example. So I'm deeply uncomfortable with that.
Yeah, fair point. Yeah.
But
are the others? Do any of the others have that kind of government overreach? Do you think?
Not so much. Although, as soon as you
start
using
increasing the platform's liability is a good thing, I think.
I think so. Although, the second to last one, of course, we want to see offences and penalties around harm. But who's defining harm? A whole lot of the woke far left would find this program very offensive. They'll feel very unsafe hearing from us and harmful. It is, yeah, absolutely. So, we've got to be careful here around what is harm. So, you and I can sit down, and I think most of our viewers know, pick their parents, what our kids are seeing. In fact, there was an article, was it in Stuff Today or the Herald? Where was it, the BBC? Of, a mother doing her absolute best to protect her youngs. Yeah, I mean, it's just an awful story.
Yeah.
And it is, that's the fundamental point. It is hard to be a parent. It's even harder in the social media environment where actually you can do your darndest, but the kids, they are very smart in this space. Hence, we need more and more help. We can't just leave it to the parents alone, but we do not want the heavy hand of government either.
There was a question asked during Q&A, and I think I've pinned it up at the right spot, but just have a listen. Erica was asked about digital ID, and I don't know if she didn't listen to the question carefully or she just actually admitted something.
It's a lot more comprehensive. Right, but will universal age verification still be part of that bill?
We are going to have age verification because we're going to make sure that under 16s are not able to access social media.
Right.
And to the best that we can, knowing that it is not a silver.
In the question, he said universal age verification. In other words, everybody has to, a little bit like the UK system, whereas there's the ability that just under 16s are targeted without you and me having to verify our age. So it's, new people coming onto the platforms, downloading the apps, etc. Did she not hear the question correctly, or do you think she just made a interesting admission?
Look, I actually don't think it's particularly interesting. It has to be universal. Ipso facto, anything like this has to be universal. I mean, the only way you can tell someone is 16 is knowing that someone who's over 16 is just that. It's like when you go to buy alcohol or go to the TAB, or even going to fly, setting up for your passport. They need the details. So any age verification system is by its nature going to be universal. And I'm quite relaxed with that, depending on how they structure it. But I want to underline again, because I'm sure the comments are going off, age verification is not digital ID. Yes, it could be the first step in that direction. We should be careful. But digital ID is a comprehensive digital expression of who you are. Age verification doesn't need to be that, but it is always going to be universal. The only way we can tell a 13-year-old is 13 is also to know that the 56-year-old is 56. So it is going to affect everybody.
Okay, let's keep going on that one. That topic's going to keep coming up, I can tell, and we'll be watching for that bill to land, and I'm sure there'll be a breaking news on that one. All right. Now, Green MP Tamitha Paul, who wants to get rid of cops and prisons, but seems to want the police to help her out when she gets comments made on her social media. Stuff came along and did this lovely puff piece for her. And the argument is that only women MPs are victims of these nasty comments and threats. Interestingly, I was at a conference last weekend and I was sitting next to a national MP. I won't name him, but he said that he actually had to shift house because of threats and his wife feeling unsafe. I know that you have received some pretty shocking threats throughout your political career, and I actually showed a email that we'd received. I showed our staff on Monday just to show the kind of unhinged comments that come through to us, although it's water off a duck's back for us. But anyway, apparently the Waitangi Tribunal has been hearing about all the female MPs that have been targeted, interestingly. So here's a Green MP who doesn't want a bill that defines what a woman is, but then is at the Waitangi Tribunal arguing that only women MPs get targeted. So go figure. But anyway, here's the puff piece.
Tamitha Paul has worked in the public sector since she was just 22 years old and says during that time she's been subjected to abuse and threats every single day.
Every single day? Yeah.
Both online.
Things like being told that I needed to be hung from a tree by a burning tyre around my neck.
And at work.
My partner picks me up and drops me off to everything because he doesn't trust that someone won't be waiting for me outside of my workplace because of everything that's happened to me.
The Green MP showed us a tiny sample of abuse levelled at her in the comments of her social media posts.
I was actually wondering, has anybody asked to see all the comments in your emails and social media, Simon? Have they done a similar investigation?
Oh, of course not. It would
I know
not
the
be
answer.
convenient.
I know the answer.
Comments such as, "What an ignorant, ridiculous female. Another stupid green-skinned bitch. You racist pig." Even this, 2 bullets could have prevented this post. This week, the Waitangi Tribunal is hearing from Wahine leaders as part of one of its largest ever social inquiries. Today, Paul brought attention to the challenges faced by rangatahi, particularly women, in politics.
You're subject to racism, to misogyny, and that's not fair because we should be criticised or praised on our politics and the decisions we make and the things that we do and say as opposed to who we are intrinsically.
Parliamentary Services says politicians across the spectrum are facing an increasing number of threats online and in the community, but women face the most. Paul wants more social regulation and stronger hate speech laws.
So I have to put safeguards in place so that I don't myself read a lot of it, and that costs money.
Okay, so apparently it costs money not to read dumb comments from dumb people on social media. I wish I could charge people for avoiding dumb comments on my social media. What do you think about the argument? I mean, let's put aside the fact that it's only female MPs. By the way, I hope they're asking Andrea Vance to turn up and explain why she called all female MPs the C word, because, that was misogyny at its worst from a media person. Tongue in cheek. But do you think, in your 12 years, do you think that the attacks, the hostility, the stuff coming at you was getting worse and worse, or did you just learn to not look at it switch off, not give it the time of day?
It's both. I mean, let's be clear at the start. The violent language and threats directed to any MPs and what Tamitha's going through is just totally unacceptable.
Yep, totally.
I think that's the real starting point, and it's clearly having an impact on her, as it has on other colleagues. It was getting worse when I was there, and the higher your profile becomes, and the more you speak into controversial issues, the worse it gets. And you and I know, even just in our work in Family First, what comes through. And I mean, we could do a quick sample of our social media channels and what's being said. I've actually reported a few people in the last few weeks around threats on my social media. So there's that. I was actually part of a research project about 6-7 years ago. And the long and the short, MPs actually do become quite desensitized. You are so used to the vitriol, the opprobrium, the violent threats, that it does become water off a duck's back. And at one level, that's a survival mechanism, but also it can blind you because, put it this way, I think the ordinary person would be shocked to know what an MP receives. And I want to be clear on this. I suspect my now former female colleagues do get it slightly worse. But these narratives sort of make it out that somehow, in this case, it's only wahine Māori. No, it's not. You mentioned that National MP earlier. I could share with you some of the awful threats in the days I was speaking up for the unborn. The threats, the rape threats, not just about me, but my family. It's just appalling. So I just make this comment too, if I might, Bob. And this is why I've got very little time for the Waitangi Tribunal. Great that they're talking to Māori women. I think that's really important. Why are they not talking to anyone else? Where's the control group? The Waitangi Tribunal is so blinkered that it takes an important issue but only talks to one segment, as if somehow they are unique, and they are not. And that's why Tamitha Paul's call for we need more hate speech laws to protect is wrong, because it's so singular. And actually, the last point, sorry to do this, but Tamitha is very big herself on social media for being quite aggressive. It's not violent in the physical sense, but ripping up documents, throwing them at. She's very provocative, and that doesn't justify people threatening her, but she's hardly an angel in this space. And so I think there needs to be a little bit of reflection. I'm sorry I didn't get the video to you of where she's out at some function and ripping up, I think, pictures of presidents and prime ministers of other countries, and again, very provocative, but that's okay. But if someone challenges her, that's not.
Yeah, okay. Your wish is my command. Here it is.
No one wants your opinion.
Yeah. Okay. And here's another one.
I don't give a fuck who talk behind my back, cause the bitch knew better than to let me hear. I don't give a fuck who talk.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry about the wording there, but let's just put it in context. It's very interesting. Actually, I did just want to put Sue's comment. She said, "Did Tamitha lament Posey Parker's treatment in Auckland?" I mean, that's just it. It kind of, they play the victim. It's like Andrea Vance. She laments the misogyny and the attacks on female MPs, and then she writes a column where she calls female MPs she doesn't like the C word. It's the kind of inconsistency and hypocrisy of the left that sort of really stands out amongst this. They can't define what a woman is and then complain that only women MPs get targeted with vile stuff. It's all a bit contradictory to me. I'd rather we just deal with the whole problem and stop this targeted group of victims.
Look, totally. And look, nothing that an MP does, so, those two videos you shared, that none of that justifies people's abuse of Tamitha or any other MP in Parliament. So I think that's, again, really important to stress. But when they sit down, and you said Andrea Vance and others, and we're victims, to go, but okay, maybe, but you're also victimizing others with your own behaviors, your own abuse. You've seen it recently with the TV1 interview scandals and so forth. It's just like, well, hold on. So I think it's important to call out the threats. I think it's important to call out the violence, but I think it's also important to reflect on one's own actions which feed into it.
Yep. Catherine says, nobody spoke out about the old lady who got punched in the face, who we actually interviewed. And I'm trying to remember what happened to the guy that was prosecuted. I think he might have got a discharge without conviction. I might need to be corrected by that. All right, let's keep on going. Now, the Greens are reliving the fact that just Marama Davidson went up to England, to the British Empire, to debate at one of the great universities of the British Empire, the Oxford debate. And basically she said she wanted to get rid of the British Empire. And then she, of course, has come back to the Parliament, which was set up by the British Empire in New Zealand. So anyway, that's interesting. That happened a year ago, but they're having a special screening to relive it. I just wanted to show you an excerpt from the speech. Look, I just grabbed this off I was going through the social media of the political parties and just stumbled across this, and they were promoting it. And I watched this little excerpt from her speech, and I can't understand what she's saying. I know that you're very bright, Simon. Can you please tell me what she was saying?
I declare in the shadows of my ancestors that the sun must set not just on the British Empire, but the whole project of empire, and that accountability, redress, and a reset of power back to the collective of peoples is the only way that we will repair our connections back to each other and for our collective grandchildren. But I implore you to vote, if your heart can find it, for humanity, and I will take that win even if it means sharing it with someone who stood here and devalued my people.
Nice. Okay. What did she say? Could you explain that?
Well, look, it's just performative emotion. She might want to look at... Oh, it is. Look, two things. I mean, you can have your thoughts around the British Empire, the Turkish Empire, the Egyptian Empire, the Roman Empire, the Russian Empire. I mean, the idea that the British Empire is unique is hilarious. She might even want to look closer to home as the various iwi over hundreds of years fought and took over each other through combat. And they might use different words, but actually they were colonizing for all intents and purposes other areas. It's one of the reasons why the Waitangi tribunal process is quite fraught, because different iwi have been conquering and taking over each other. But what they won't be telling people is her offsider was Don Brash. Dr. Don Brash was also at that debate. So I think it's going to be fascinating when all those Green Party supporters turn up for that little fundraiser and realise that Marama's offsider in the debate, was Don Brash. I think it's going to be hilarious.
Yeah. Okay, fascinating. Right, let's keep going. Now, the curriculum, the education curriculum, it has been delayed. The teachers are saying that this is a win. And so they haven't delayed science, but I think they've delayed English and maths, or is it one of them they've kept on going? I think it's maybe maths has implemented and going, and it's English and science they've delayed 2 years. The problem is, and look, I just want to ask you generally, is it a problem that they've delayed the curriculum 2 years? Is that a win to the unions? Is this a bit of a back down by National? But the red flag we just want to raise is that as part of the postponement, they have delayed the rollout of the new relationship sexuality education. It was supposed to be for next year. It's now 2029, which means that schools, some schools are going to be sneaky and revert back to the radical stuff. And it's very important for parents to establish what their school is using, whether they've gone back to the previous curriculum, which is 2009, I think it was, or have they gone back to the radical one that Labor introduced in 2020, or what are they doing? Or maybe they're just letting parents do the job and not teachers. Anyway, is this a win for the unions and a loss for National, the government?
In short, it probably is. Like everything, we need more information. Look, it is quite possible that the ministry and the minister said, you know what, actually, there's too many errors, mistakes. We actually do need to consult more. There's problems that we pretty much need to iron out. I mean, that's possible. But this is very much what the unions want. They don't want any change. And by the way, the union might represent teachers, but it doesn't represent all of them. And look, curriculums change. It is an enormous workload. My wife's a teacher. She understands that. She talks to me about it. But actually, we do need to make changes. And it doesn't matter if it's today, next week, next year, or 2029. It has to happen at some point. So I think it is unfortunately a back down, or at least looks like a back down. I suspect the unions, they're not partisan. They are far left. They are hoping beyond hope that there is a change of government at the election and they can get back to indoctrinating rather than teaching children. So personally, I'd have liked to have seen it continue and pushed out, other than if, it was just seen that actually the changes being made weren't tidy. There's always the chance that actually they got lots of little things of fact wrong. But it is a back down. The RSE delay, that's a worry. I mean, that's another 3 years. It doesn't matter, Bob, if it's the RSE side or across math, science. New Zealand kids are being failed by our education system. You don't need to believe me. You just have to look at the statistics and then compare those to countries around the world. New Zealand kids are being failed by their education.
Yep. Okay, look, I do want to cover this one, so I'm going to get it in so we don't get squeezed right at the end, because I do find it quite quirky, and that is the fact that there is some senior national MPs who could be out of Parliament in November because the national vote is around the 30 mark, and these are list MPs, and because list MPs basically are topped up on top of the electorate seat wins, it means that on basic polling, they could lose these 4 stars, which I find ironic that 4 of the stars of the National Party are people that possibly can't win an electorate. And that's a part of MMP I don't like. I still think there should be more electorate representation. If I was to change MMP, I would increase seat allocation, electorate seats to 3/4 of Parliament, and then just a little top up for the proportional representation of list MPs, because then the politicians are accountable to the local electorate and not to the party. But I mean, yeah, is this a legitimate strategy? You tell a candidate who's running for national in an electorate, oh look, we know you're going to win the seat, but throw it because we really want to get Nicola and Chris and Paul back in Parliament.
I'm not sure. Well, it is legitimate. There's nothing illegal in it. But it's a strategy. If a party wanted to deploy it, they can. You can begin to raise if you think there's moral issues or otherwise. But again, there's nothing illegal. It is a strategy. But I have to say, for me, it illustrates a growing problem between the whole list and electorate dynamic. It becomes a two-tiered system, and I recall it when I was in Parliament. By the way, I was never asked to throw my seat, but sort of discussions around, well, we need to protect these list MPs so they can go on to hold, senior portfolios and focus on that. And by the way, you electorate MPs just do the hard work on the ground day by day. And it's like, no, I'm sorry, I'm not going to work my butt off in the electorate day by day representing, 60,000+ people of the range of views so you can sit in a Crown limousine and do none of that work. And I think that's fundamentally, I think most Kiwis get it, and no disrespect to my list colleagues, but by and large, they've got no idea what it's like to look after an electorate. There are wonderful list MPs out there who do great work, but they choose their constituency. They'll represent an ethnic group or a particular focus. That's brilliant. I had 64,000 people, 64,000 different views on different topics. I'm exaggerating for effect, but it's that day-to-day connection, which ultimately actually impacts how you present in caucus and into the Parliament. And so, again, the idea that we need to protect listies, no. If they're that good, go and win a seat. And then, carry on. And yep, it's a huge workload to be a minister and hold an electorate, but many good people have done it before, and it keeps you grounded. Because I was struck by this, Bob. You'd be in Parliament, and what seemed like really important issues, you'd come back to the streets of Mission Bay or Meadowbank or wherever, people are like, oh, you were in Parliament? Oh, we didn't even know these things were happening. So there's something grounding. So no, the idea of throwing seats to keep people who can't even win an electorate seat in is ridiculous.
I mean, I find it ironic because second from right is Paul Goldsmith, who, of course, always had to throw the Epsom seat so that ACT could get, a across the line when they were sort of around the wasted vote margin. So it is slightly ironic. But you've also got some cabinet ministers. I'm thinking of Simeon Brown, Erica Stanford. They are electorate MPs, and they're also cabinet ministers, senior cabinet ministers with a couple of portfolios. I mean, gee, do they sleep?
They will work even harder. I mean, let's be clear, electorate work never ends. But many MPs have done it. And I've always felt a slight uncomfortability. It's often party leaders who decide to leave their electorate and focus just on being the leader. But I think it begins to create a two-tiered dynamic that somehow there's the constituent work or electorate work, and now there's this leadership work. It's like, no, it's meant to be fused. And if you just bring up those four faces, just very quickly, if you don't mind. Look, Nicola has never been able to win a seat anywhere. Chris Bishop, to be fair, he's currently he holds the seat of Lower Hutt. It's possibly the polls are against him, but he's been in a seat that moves. Personally, I don't actually think Paul has thrown the seat. I think he's very capable, but ACT's winning Epsom hands down. It's not because National thrown it. I personally think that's a misnomer. Jerry used to hold his seat of Ireland, but he's lost it. So, this is politics. I mean, myself, I lost my seat. These things change, but the idea that we need to protect these guys, no. There's many good, talented people, and I mean, I hope these guys get their seats back, but if they don't, we'll replace them. We'll be fine.
Actually, if I remember rightly, Jacinda Ardern struggled to win a seat for quite a while she was in Parliament. She lost to Nikki Kay in Auckland, and then she she struggled to win a seat, but somehow they get it on the list and they get their toes under the table, and next minute they're Prime Minister. All right, look, very quickly, just I'm going to do the last three topics as kind of a quick yes/no from you as to whether you support. So, firstly, the budget cuts. I mean, the public service. I mean, Labor. This is off Labor's Facebook website. They say, you can't slash thousands of jobs without affecting frontline services. But National, in response, put up this graph, which shows the number of public servants, and it shows it just completely exploded under Labor. They love public servants, don't they? Actually, why do Labor love public servants?
Because they're paid for by the government, and generally quite well. So public servants, don't bite the hand that feeds them, so they tend to vote left.
Okay, and it's socialism. Government can solve every problem.
Very much. Look, I think it's a good idea. We have far too many people in the public service, but the caveat here is National is already writing in the savings to the budget, but hasn't actually sacked one single civil servant.
Right. Okay. The next one is that there is a policy by National to get rid of good character assessments for sex offenders. They say that victims of sex offenders don't want to hear how nice and, community-minded and great past and normally well-behaved their offender is. If they're a sex offender, that speaks for itself. What do you think?
Sounds good, but actually begin to delve into it. Think about the 17 or 18, let's make it a 19-year-old so we don't have to get into the age. The 19-year-old who's made a singular mistake versus the predator over many years. And then the next question is, why just sexual offences? Why are we allowing good character assessments for other crimes? For me, it's an inconsistency. So don't get me wrong, I've got no time for sexual offenders. Of course I don't. But I think it's just a populist policy. It sounds good. Oh, yeah, they're tough. Yeah. But actually, why is sexual offending different to others? Why does the Christchurch terrorist, the mosque terrorist, Brendan Tarrant, get to have a good character reference?
Yeah. Okay, and last one, New Zealand First. They want to make KiwiSaver enrolment compulsory at birth. That a good one?
I actually don't mind. I don't mind that one, although they're going to have to explain where the money comes from. This is not a zero sum. It's echoing what Donald Trump has done in the US, so there's some prudency in that part.
Okay, and they want to buy the BNZ back.
Barking mad. Absolutely barking mad.
Yeah, I don't know why they're not selling Kiwi Bank. It's woke. Anyway.
Where's the money? Where's the money coming from to buy a bank back? I don't know. Barking mad.
Yeah, what is it? 30 billion or something?
Enormous amount. It just.
Okay, look, just before we go, watch out tonight. There's a new episode of Counterculture, and they're talking about immigration. And it's a fascinating chat, so watch out. That's the Gen Z, young millennials, the discussions that they're having, and it's immigration, assimilation. How do you hold on to, does multiculturalism work, or is it monoculturalism to give national identity? So it is a great discussion that you can see, and that'll be coming up later tonight, so watch for that episode to drop. All right, we're out of time. We did well, Simon. That was the fastest hour of the week, so you can go and make dinner now. And I will be back tomorrow morning at 7:30 for Daybreak. Thanks for watching. Have a great night.